even though I born in the Midwest, but not raised in the Midwest, I somehow have mastered the Midwest goodbye, which means that, we will be here for at least an hour.
I'm from Nebraska.
So there you go.
You need to
She
say no
knows
more.
what it is. I've
So
never
you
even
know
heard
exactly.
of this before, but I mean,
You've
No,
never heard of the
okay,
Midwest
this
goodbye?
we should talk about on the podcast.
Yeah, we should. Yes.
we already are.
Absolutely.
What are you talking about?
Oh, are we? Okay.
You have no idea what the Midwest goodbye is.
I've never heard of that. I mean, obviously, I can kind of get what you're going for here because I know you, Cormac. So
Yeah. It's the whelp when you slap your knees and you're just like, well, that means about another half an hour worth of conversation.
Minimum. That's half an
Minimum.
hour till the next goodbye. Yeah.
Exactly.
until the next goodbye. How many goodbyes are
a
there?
Midwest goodbye is when it takes about hour and a half, 2 hours from the time you say, well, it's about time we get going, until one actually either walks. I wouldn't even say walks out of the house, because then you have to walk down the sidewalk to the car, get out of the driveway or lane.
Stand at the car for a while.
Yeah,
Have
in the
that
street.
continual Oh yeah, but I forgot. Hold on. Let me tell you something else. And then that tell you something else. Then
So it's
goes.
It's just like this podcast, is what you're saying. Like
Exactly.
we've been having
We've
how
had a
many
Midwest goodbye
episodes?
for 13 years.
That's what I was. That's what I was.
The
thinking.
ending is kind of like the end
Yeah.
of a comet. It just slowly drifts away.
Yeah. All right. Well,
the last episode that we ever do, which who knows whenever that will be, that will be when the door actually shuts, car turns on, and is down the road.
Then probably the year before that, you call the episode the Midwest goodbye.
Yeah.
the only
And then
thing
you have
that I
another
can
group.
really use as an analogy here is like when I go skiing or something, and you say last run, and it's not the last run, because you never ever say last run, because that's how you get hurt. If you say it's the
Exactly.
last run, you're going home in a cast.
Yes, exactly. That's so true.
I don't know if, like, say when you're leaving a Thanksgiving dinner or whatever dinner, it happens to be in the Midwest, that you end up in a cast, or at least I might be doing it wrong.
I see. You're taking these things and you're putting them together.
Now I have, however, mastered the Irish goodbye as well.
I was going to say, I
Where-
think they're opposites. Like the
Yes.
Irish goodbye and the Midwest goodbye are polar opposites.
Yes. Where I'll get a text and say, Cormac, where are you? Oh, I'm already home. Like, you didn't even say goodbye. I'm like, uh-huh. Exactly.
Did they just not notice? I don't know. I understand how that works.
Hey,
you just walked out
you know-
mid-sentence, you're gone.
And there's no offense intended. It's just, I don't want to have this protracted, long 2-hour goodbye. I just want to go
So
home.
they thought you were
I've
going to
been
the bathroom?
waiting. No.
Or
they
when
just,
to get another beer or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just never
I
come
mean,
back.
there will be somebody who will see you as you're nodding to them as you're backing out the door. It's just like, and then you back out the door and you're gone. And then,
I'm
and then
learning
somebody
so
else is like,
much.
hey, where's Cormac? And you're just like, oh, he went home about an hour ago.
He had a thing he had to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
always my hook. I got a thing I gotta
Wait till Boston, Evan. I will
What
start
is-
showing you an Irish goodbye.
All right. What is this called that we're doing right now, where it's the protracted hello? It's like we haven't even
Ooh,
acknowledged that
Protracted hello.
we have a guest here. So Carla
That's
Johnson, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
our
Maybe-
official introduction right there.
Maybe it's one of those, you two had something going and I accidentally got on the wrong channel and just showed up.
So who's this in our meeting?
and so they're standing there with their cup of coffee. He's like, I was just trying to walk by, man. I was just trying to
Got
walk
trapped.
I got sucked in.
You got
Exactly.
stuck. You got stuck. Well, Carla, welcome officially. Thank you
Thank
for
It's
showing
fun.
up.
It's already fun to be here.
It's fun, right? Like, we're gonna have a good conversation. And Carla, can you just give us, Cormac and I, like, what's the intro that you give to people on what you do? It's we've chatted before. I'm reading through your website, but I still feel like there's so many things. Like, how do you explain what you do?
I talk about how I help people break through their legacy status quo ways of thinking by learning new ways to be curious and innovative thinkers and creative problem solvers.
Nice. And you have a bit of an experience in AEC, right?
I do.
You've run marketing departments in pretty large architecture
I
firms
have,
from
yeah, and I was telling somebody the other day who have known me for, I don't know, 8 or 10 years as a speaker, that I started out in college as an electrical engineering major, and they went, "What?" Like, never saw that coming.
right.
So I did. I started out in electrical engineering, but went from left brain to right brain, and I have a master's in history, but my master's degree was on historic preservation, historic architecture.
Excellent.
Because during that time, I started to work for mostly architecture firms, but some AE firms doing business development.
Okay.
Yeah. So HCR is the big firm that
Right.
some people may know.
Okay.
The other were
Yeah.
regional or local firms.
For
yeah.
sure, for sure. All right. Well, thank you for that quick intro. And I think one of the things that Cormac and I were chatting a little bit before this, and we thought a good place to kick this off would be to talk about curiosity. You mentioned
Yes.
curiosity. I think a lot of people maybe think of themselves as curious, but something I saw in your TED Talk that you did was like, we lose this curiosity early on. We're actually taught very early on, like, to stop asking questions. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a line that you delivered in that TED Talk that I've brought up on this podcast before, which is you said, like, now all of a sudden we're coloring inside the lines, right? And
Yeah.
I've literally talked about that exact thing being told to me as a first-year architecture student by my studio professor. He said, the worst thing that could have ever happened to you is that you were taught to color inside the lines. And it was like a brain-busting moment when that happened. It's like, oh, okay, tell me more. Like that actually really made sense to me as somebody who was kind of natural proclivity towards art and music and things like that early on. And then it's like, okay, now you go through school and you check the boxes and you do all of these things, I think is kind of the point behind what we're talking about your TED Talk. But curiosity is something that people can definitely lose over time, right?
Yeah, and I really became passionate about this when we had kids and I watched the kids go into, not necessarily preschool, because I think curiosity and discovery and imagination is still really encouraged in preschool. But even by kindergarten, I see a little bit of, especially our kids, they're inquisitive still as adults. I mean, they're in college now. They were always getting in trouble for asking too many questions. And I'm like, yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because that was always me growing up. And I mean, on one hand, we can't have an adult world that's designed around kindergarten thinking, as in question every single thing, because we would never get things done. But I think the pendulum gets swung so hard the other way as we go through school and college and then into our careers, that people are mostly teachers. How do I get the most into my students for what I want to teach them in the shortest amount of time and most efficient way? And there isn't that kind of time. And sometimes even on the teacher's part, not all teachers are like this, there isn't that inquisitiveness and I think curiosity on their part, and to really push the kids to ask them, what do you think? And I think what I've seen since I was in school, I think that's a big reason why we don't have a next generation of thinkers who are very strong critical thinkers, because they've been given a lot of tools so they don't have to think in the ways that I used to. But I think that as kids go along, it's like we need them to understand these things and check these boxes, and all of this is inefficient, and if this is what you want to do in life, here's the path that you take to get there. And I was just never a person like that. I mean, I went into electrical engineering because I was good at math and science. And I had thought about going to the Art Institute in Chicago. And my dad asked a critical question as a person from a very small rural town in Nebraska at the time, like, what do you do with a graphic design degree? And I'm like, to be honest, I don't know. Maybe that's not a good path to pursue. And now looking back, it somehow it would have worked out just fine. So I went into a field of study that I felt was more reliable, but it just wasn't me. And so when I then went from engineering into history, because I became super curious through history, and that just happened to also help me in marketing, because I've always been a good writer, and that's how I got my first job in architecture, is because I was curious and I could write well, and I had enough engineering to understand what they were doing as architects. And I think for a lot of people as they grow up, they're not encouraged to continue to even have lines around where they're curious. I think the all or nothing mentality about curiosity is what teaches us not to be curious as we grow up.
Something interesting that you just said about reliability, and then in your TED Talk you talk about certainty. And I'm now starting to teach, and I've seen that I was teaching a more advanced studio, and they're like, well, at this stage you should know this, and this. And I'm like, well, where is their questioning of why? Where's their questioning of, do I really have to do it this way? And I'm kind of generalizing here, but they've started to get into this kind of like rhythm of, this is what you're going to do in the profession, so this is what you need to know. And so there's these blinders on that say, okay, is this buildable? Is this achievable? Is this something that I can do? And the thing that I was noticing is that this natural curiosity to just stop and say, why? Why am I doing this? Why do I have to do it this way? Can I do it this way? And just this natural, just like that kid in kindergarten saying, well, why do I need to learn this?
Yeah, the trade-off is time, the time it takes to answer all those queries and work through thoughts and ideas versus efficiency, right? And so these things are constantly kind of butting up against each other.
But the thing that and you and I have this conversation all the time, Evan, and so Carla, let me pull you into this conversation. Is like, we talk about the status of architecture and the built environment and what you see, and you see things becoming a little bit more vanilla, a little bit more generic, and it feels like the questioning, the curiosity, what's funny is like you say, we can't always continue to keep asking why. And I was sitting there scribbling. So I usually have sitting on my desk somewhere a question mark, and everybody asks me, what does the question mark mean? And the question mark for me always is question everything.
Just like a reminder that you have on your desk all the time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and it's purely it's just something that's sitting there in my it's question why. And now I have a variety of different things: the practical side of questioning why, and the more curious side of questioning why. But it really is something that I personally sort of don't ever want to stop doing, is questioning why. Now that's probably why I wasn't a good fit in the Army, even but but. In your TED Talk, I will say that we'll probably talk a little bit about your TED Talk because it was very inspiring. It was one of these things that I was just like, yes, because there were so many things about this atrophy of curiosity that seems to be stifling creativity, innovation, all of these other things that I'm just curious from the more and more people that you get involved with and talk to and all of that other stuff, like what is everybody's take on this?
And it is kind of interesting, and for anybody watching or listening who hasn't seen the TED Talk, the gist is about 100 years ago, 1860, when the Industrial Revolution began. It was an amazing explosion of what could be in business and realizing the true human potential, we thought at the time. And there were all of these wonderful things that came, but the trade-off was our human potential, because all of a sudden we valued systemization and processes and formalized thinking. And like you were saying, McCormick, instead of asking why and what if and what could be kind of questions, it was just purely coloring inside the lines and following the same so a lot of times physical movement over and over and over again. So it took us out of that mindset of asking and observing, really, and being curious about what could be. And then it was, as we went on, what happened is that colleges and universities began cranking out students who could think in this way, because they were the ones who would get the jobs. So then we had to keep moving upstream, so to speak. And then you had, high school students, you had middle school students, you had elementary students that all of a sudden, they had to be prepared to go to middle school, to a high school, to a college, to a work world that was like this. And the industrialization, what we didn't realize, really systematized everything in education down, now today, a lot of times in preschool.
Oh yeah.
You know, if you don't get into the right preschool in some places, you don't get into the right Ivy League college kind of thing, you know. And so we have this impression that with AI, it's just going to make this exponentially worse. And all of the humanity will be sucked out of anything that we have left in the curiosity. But I truly believe that AI is a superpower and the key to how we reinvigorate our curiosity. Because in so many instances, you know, we just assume that a new technology, it's called Luhmann's law, that a new technology will be used in the same way a former technology is. Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of people, they think, oh, AI is about efficiency. I mean, how many people use it for search now instead of Google? Mm-hmm. And if you go to Google and put in a search, you know, you get an AI answer first.
Because you want the answer, you don't want a bunch of ads, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There is efficiency built into it, right? And that is, I think, a reason why a lot of people use it. But what's also interesting is how it prompts you to follow up, and then it prompts you to follow up some more. And it's like go deeper down the rabbit hole. It's actually encouraging you to use the product, but for your own benefit, more or less.
Exactly. Yeah, and you think back, like when we have some new technologies, it doesn't take away the humanity. Like calculators didn't make us quit doing math. You know, that I know there were teachers who said, oh, you have to learn to do this in your head because you won't have a calculator everywhere you go. Well, actually we do now. But you know, exactly. it just raised us to another level where we can do a lot more complex thinking when it comes to math. And I believe it's the same way with AI. AI can take us to a whole new level of curiosity and inquisitiveness that we don't give it credit for exactly what you just said, Evan. We can ask it something and it doesn't just come back with the answer. It expands on that answer and connects the dots so exponentially in a way that us as individuals, as humans, we don't have that number of experiences to connect the dots with. Even if, 3 of us together, or 10 of us, or 50 or 100 or whatever, it can connect so many dots and bring us things that we never thought of. And I find I'm having conversations with AI and ChatGPT about things I never imagined. And it's pushing me sometimes to the point where, okay, I got to take a break. I got to really think about this, for a little bit. And I think that's a really beautiful position for us to be in.
You know, that's... I've been trying to come to terms with AI, of like, what's next, because especially in the AEC world, everybody is looking at, oh my gosh, AI, it's going to come in to replace us. And we always have this conversation that Evan had kind of brought up, and I know it's not his quote, but I always attribute it to him, is AI isn't going to replace the architect, it's going to replace the architect who doesn't embrace AI. And it's really, and so everybody, is starting to like, oh my gosh, AI is going to, replace us and stuff. And they're not seeing the potentials of that creative spark, that, being able to continue to keep stretching what you're thinking of. And it's just like, okay, it's getting what I'm talking about, but no, let me think a little bit more. Let me think about a different prompt to kind of go in a different direction and things like that. And they're not using it as the creative tool. They're thinking of it as a replacement tool or something like that, rather than kind of understanding. And as I started to watch other shorts and the TED Talk and things like that, just was thinking, okay, this is actually a better way to think about AI as an assistant to creativity, not it takes over. Okay, here's my thinking. Draw me a line, and then it draws me a line, and then it wants to go ahead and take over. It's like, oh well, I guess I'm replaced because it drew a line, kind of thing. And so I think, I don't know. It was good to kind of listen to other people's perspectives about how AI is coming, because everybody in the profession right now has got the blinders on, thinking it's the replacement tool for us, and not the assistant as it rightly should be, which is just hey, you thought about it this way, but here's another way you can think about it. Ooh, you're right. I could think of it that way. They're not seeing it, or I wasn't even seeing it.
Yeah, I think what I'm kind of nervous about watching the current behavior around the use of these tools is just, there's a lot of people passing off the output as their own because it can sound so much like them. And I guess, and that's not even what I'm worried about. I mean, what I'm actually concerned about is that people just stop with what it gives you, right? And Cormac, you said a key word, which was stretch. And I think what tools potentially have the ability to do in cases like this is you can you can ask it things that you actually don't want to ask another person. And I think, when it comes to psychology, when it comes to therapies, especially for men who don't want to share their feelings and don't want to talk to people and don't want to go to the doctor and I'm just talking about myself here, right? So I don't want to go to the dentist. I don't want to do any of these things. And it's like, wow, here's somebody that like the stakes are pretty low here with judgment, right? Like it's not gonna, and it's going to give you kind of honest feedback that's unbiased, but hopefully, right? That's the hope, I guess. So I think there's some interesting potential there. When it comes to creative things, I think it's great for it to make arguments for and against things, and for you to understand a broader landscape that isn't so entrenched in confirmation bias that you bring to the table, whether you know it or not, right? And so I think there's a lot of potential in Carla, I'm really curious to what you think about this, because I know you're already like pro, like this is actually going to be beneficial. And I'm just curious kind of how deep that goes for you, because like there's great output, but you can't stop there, I guess, is kind of my prompt now back to you, and curious what you have to say about that.
Well, I think you hit a couple of things that are really, really important in how we can use AI in a really positive way. And you use the example of, men asking mental health questions, or, it could be questions about relationships or whatever questions that are typically socially taboo. You have a safe partner who will never judge you, that you can have a conversation with, that, you don't run into on the street or in the hallway or see on a Zoom call, and you kind of like don't make eye contact because you remember the vulnerable conversation that you had. And I think that's a really important thing that we don't consider with AI, is that it is that 100% confidential conversation partner to have some of these conversations with, whether it, be about something about that we care about our own mental situation or relationships. And I think about it in the context of ideas and curiosity. I mean, I think about the number of people who I say, why didn't you share that idea? And their answer is, I didn't want to look dumb. Yeah. So now we can go down the rabbit hole with an idea or a what if or how might we kind of scenario, and play it out 6, 8, 10, questions down and see where it will go. And again, not have that judgment. And so we feel more confident than we feel more confident to bring it up in a meeting or to volunteer that kind of idea. And we can play it out a little bit further. And I think that's really important for us.
You just prompted a memory from, I shouldn't use that word. Cormac and I had a conversation with William Dodge on a recent podcast, and he talked about kind of naivete, being naive as kind of a superpower in many, going in and being totally forthright and saying, like, I don't know the answer. I'm going to try to figure it out. But also because you don't come from a background in a certain thing, it kind of, you don't have those biases and you don't have the constraints that a lot of other people are playing within, right? It's like that 5-year-old mentality. It's like they don't know what they don't know, and because of that, they can unlock certain things because they're not coming in with the rules, quote unquote, already applied to them, right? And I think that through this kind of role playing aspect, you get to be as dumb as you actually are in a very safe space, especially when it's things you don't know about. I think that's a really interesting way to kind of think about it, but also giving yourself permission to be like that while you're learning and being curious is absolute. Like, it has to be a safe space for curiosity to really go where it can possibly go. I remember an article or a conversation with Bjarke Ingels, right? And he talked about the Copenhagen ski hill that's also a recycling plant. And it's like, well, it's a totally absurd idea. But in any normal architecture office, absurd ideas are literally like wadded up and thrown in the trash can. You're not allowed to even have absurd ideas. There's no time for absurd ideas. But at the same time, you look at it and you're like, well, it's an obvious, logical idea when it's all done. Right. But it had to start out as an absurd idea to get to that point. And how did that happen? Because there's a safe place to have absurd ideas. At least this is my construct, my perception. Maybe it's a little bit of a story that I've told myself about their situation, their studio. But I feel like, I mean, that makes sense when I say it out loud, and at the same time I realize like that's a commodity, or it's just not a luxury that a lot of firms employ. In a very creative field like architecture, there's still these really hard constraints, and it seems like ever more so these constraints are just weighing us down, and it's harder and harder to be curious. And I think it is interesting that you point out that this tool actually is a potential way out of that.
And that dynamic that you talk about, Evan, in innovation, we call that the naive expert. Like the naive person who doesn't know the industry or the client or whatever, who comes in and asks questions that all of a sudden are brilliant because the people who are the traditional experts have discounted it or never considered it because, this is the way things are done, and this is how we think, and this is how we do things. And I think another way that AI is so helpful in us in our thinking is, let's say we do have a well-shaped, well-formulated idea that we feel comfortable is pushing boundaries just enough, and we're happy with it. Let's put that idea into AI and ask a couple of questions. One is, what are biases that I don't even see that are affecting this outcome? And two, what's the opposite dynamic of this? Like, what happens if we go in the opposite direction? Right. And I think both of those really give us insights in ways that we don't normally think or ask ourselves. Because even if we're in a firm and we say, like, what are the things that I'm missing that are really important here? We still have a very closed environment of experiences and unknown biases. I mean, lots of times when we're trying to identify our biases, we can't because they're so formulated in how we think. We don't even realize that we have them. And AI can be a more objective partner for us to identify those, and we go, I can't believe I didn't see that. And it can change the whole dynamic of how we look at the design or how we solve the problem or the opportunity is there. And I think one of the things that really helps with AI and how it can connect dots for us is that when we do have an idea and we really want to push where our thinking is going or our client's thinking is going, is that it can connect the dots for us to how this may have been done in different scenarios or different ways. And so when we present the idea, it doesn't sound quite so crazy. As in, if we just started out with, okay, we have this recycling building and we want to put a ski run on top. It's like, well, that's absolutely crazy. But I would imagine if you went back through the design conversation, somehow they brought together all of these different things that they've observed, and it made perfect sense at the time. And I think whenever we can connect the dots like that with big ideas and new ways of thinking, it makes it feel not quite so weird and out there, and more likely that at least discussions will be had where before it would be shut down.
Yeah, thanks for making that distinction. It wasn't an absurd idea just to be absurd, right? It literally was like the perfect combination. But I'm, again, kind of making my own story about this, right? But it's like, it was taking the things that made sense and putting them together and coming up with something new, which is what design is, right?
Exactly.
That's literally what it is coming up with new things with seemingly unconnected ideas and creating something new. One thing that I've noticed with AI, though, and I mean, this is maybe a bit of a bone to pick with it, is that I think a lot of times it's overly, like, pleased about all of your ideas. Great
it's a
idea.
Bit like your mother, right?
Let's explore that more. And it's like, maybe a little more honest version. I actually think that there was somebody brought that up with one of the OpenAI people, and they're like, yeah, it's a little over the top with like being overly congratulatory about all of your ideas, no matter how good or bad they are.
It's kind of as we talked about, like the participation trophy generation and things like that. It's just like every idea is a great idea,
right?
And like, you know what? Sometimes maybe not.
It's not like architecture school.
We need a true Gen X, AI generator. Yes. That's just like, really, dude.
Looks good. Start over.
Like just yesterday, I was working through an idea on ChatGPT, and I always put in the scenario, and then I say, give me 20 options for whatever my question is. And it was like, 14 of them were decent. And I said, okay, I want 6 more to replace this. And I gave it some new criteria. And every single time it got worse. And I finally said, you're really, really bad at this. Like, you did good over here, but you just keep getting worse. And, and for me, I wouldn't say that to a person in real life. I might say it in my head, like you're really bad at coming up with the ideas or thinking this through. And so for me, it's also a way to express that frustration. And like part of my curiosity with AI is how far can I push it to think? And I know it learns from what I think, and we go back and forth. But I do notice that sometimes if it heads down just a little bit on a vector that's, slightly to the left or right of what I want, then it doesn't take long and it's completely off course.
Yeah,
And,
right.
and for me, it makes me go back and wonder, like, where did my thinking veer it that way?
Yeah, interesting. Well, when it comes to like curiosity and innovation and the people that you're working with, I mean, can you give us kind of a deeper dive into that? I mean, maybe that's an AI term too. I keep seeing deep dives. We used to delve, now we deep dive. But this, what are you working with people there? Because I mean, this you talked about in the TED Talk. You talk about losing these skills. We talk about constraints of time and efficiency and deadlines. I mean, this is an industry that is built on deadlines and not having the time. Like every project is billed by the hour, and the less hours you spend, the better. So the project's going to be better, right? Like that makes sense. So
yeah, logically it makes sense, right? But one of the first things that I teach people to do with curiosity is let's sit with the problem longer. Because back to that exact thing you just said, the faster we can do this and the more efficient and the fewer hours, the better for the firm. Except if we don't stop and think about the challenge that we have, then it becomes the question of, are we actually solving the right problem? And I actually learned this from a graphic designer when I worked at HDR. We were working on some display boards for projects for a conference. And we were going back and forth, and I said, the designer on the team that you have working on this is spending so much time up front. And I just feel that that needs to be shortened so we can spend more time on getting it done right. And he said, no, you have the ratio completely wrong. And he ended up having her do it design it with this much design time and that much execution, and flip the other way. And when we sat with it more up front and really talked it through, the end product was so much better. And actually it took less time. And I think that's one thing we don't consider. We want to rush to solve the problem or, get it done or get it out the door and all of these things without really realizing if we sit with it first and just, go back to that game of 20 questions. Like just ask the questions, don't answer it. I think that can give us a lot of opportunities and insights that we don't normally see. And that's usually where I start people on reinvigorating their curiosity to start with, is just to ask questions.
So let me ask you this. So, one of the things that, to kind of Evan's point about trying to get it done quicker, making decisions faster and things like that, are some of the software tools and things like that we use. We use Revit. Revit forces us to make decisions quicker, right? Whether it's the right decision, wrong decision, it's a decision. You've made that decision, commit it to paper, and let's move on to the next thing, or let's develop that into a constructible thing. And I always look at it this way, is that we talk about Revit in terms of like, well, if we put more time up front to develop it and to design it and to think about it and things like that, then honestly it'll take us less time to do construction documents because we've thought through all of the scenarios. And we don't think that way anymore in architecture. We think billable hours, let's crank it out and things like that. So when you're having these conversations with people, do you talk about how you see the need to kind of basically rethink the process to kind of like regain the process of curiosity that then will help with productivity?
Yes, because I think that's a balance also. So if people look at AI as hugely efficient and can take over a lot of things that humans are doing, it isn't that we won't need humans. It's that, you know how like all the minutia of the work that you do saps your energy, and you're exhausted, and you never have time to do that higher level work. Like I think that's the beauty of where AI comes in, is that it takes a lot of this rote, repetitive, foundational work off of our plate that ideally gives us space to do some of this other thinking. So it can take what we would normally be doing as billable hours type of thinking, and we can put it into AI tools and have AI tools do it for us. Leaves us some of this space where we can think and then also use AI to challenge and expand some of these things that we think. So I talk about a curiosity compass. And the questions that we ask, just like any traditional compass, we can go in any direction that we want. And there isn't a direction that's right or wrong, but we have to understand what direction we want to go in. So I think of it in terms of if you're looking at a compass into the west are tactical questions, and then opposite it on the east are exploratory questions. Those are opposites. If you look on the south position, those are more logistical questions, and then in the north position is strategic. So a majority of all of the questions, regardless of what position you are in a firm, are tactical and logistical questions.
Sure.
They're very much focused about how do we get the work done and out the door.
Yeah.
So maybe, like if we're in design, we may ask, questions that are slightly more exploratory, but we still swing back pretty hard to the logistics. How do we get this done? We might be a little more strategic, but again, tactical. How do we make this happen? It always snaps us back into that logistical, tactical kind of thinking. But the big opportunity for curiosity is in that upper right-hand corner. I guess you'd call it the northeast quadrant. Questions that are both strategic and exploratory. And these are harder questions for us because, one, we're not used to asking these kind of questions. We're used to asking questions that drive us toward concrete answers about getting things done. And that's the big part of curiosity is you don't ask those questions because it's all about that, blue ocean or blue water or, groundbreaking or, whatever the cliche is. It's that new ground. And when I show people this compass, or if you're listening, you can draw it out, I say, start to keep a tally. Yeah, there you go. We have an artist with this. And I say, literally keep a tally, carry that little card around like you just drew, Cormac, and put a tick mark as you ask questions. What quadrant did it go in? And I will bet big money that 99% of those questions will never fall in that northeast quadrant. Because one, we feel more safe and secure in the logistical tactical questions because they have black and white answers.
Yeah.
The
like the
others we
question
may
of
venture
what
into.
if, that's a hard question to answer. It's like,
Exactly.
do we even want to take the time to think about what if, or do we just want to get to work, right? Like those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the question can be, what if this isn't the right work to do at all?
Right.
Yeah. Cormac's got the pregnant pause here.
No,
I can tell. I can tell you've got the
I'm
pregnant.
stuck in the what if. It's just like, that's the desire to always be able to have, I'm coming at it thinking of like, okay, as a project manager who works on all of these projects and is really supposed to kind of like push people through. All right, make your decisions faster. Let's get to the productivity side of things so that we can. And all the while, when you do that, I feel this isn't the right thing that we should be doing. These are the wrong questions we should be asking. We should be asking these what if questions. And then people say, well, Cormac, we don't have enough time to do, ask these what if questions. We need to do this. And then it's always why? Why don't we have time to do this? I mean, why are we not making time for these questions?
The thing that came up when Carla was talking about this idea of kind of this incubation stage to me, right, is it's like simmering in it and it being okay to take the time to simmer in it. And the cliche is go slow to go fast, right? It's like go slow, figure things out, work things out, take the time to craft the thing so that when it's time to go, you can execute because you know exactly what to do, right? Like that's an interesting, like that's kind of an ideal way to do a project. And at the same time, like it just always feels like go, 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 go.
Right.
The software is built for that. The time tracking is built for that. The project management is built for that. Like there are just
Right.
so many things that have kind of shoehorned us into this way of working. And I want to go back to you mentioned like the project manager example, and I naturally think of the designer example, which is we do a lot of options, we do a lot of different ideas, and we throw 95% of them away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to do things wrong to do things right. You learn through that whole process. And I think a
Absolutely.
lot of times people forget that we learn through that process, and because we just want to get to the answers. We just want to solve the problem, have all the right answers, and produce the product in the shortest amount of time possible. And it's interesting because just this week a talk came out between the lead at Stripe, the CEO of Stripe, and Johnny Ive, who used to be the lead creative officer at Apple. And he has a company now called Love From, and he talked specifically about slowing down the process to get to a better answer. And is that quantifiable? Maybe, maybe not, right? I mean, it's very touchy feely. It's not maybe metrics driven, but it's like, how does he do that? Well, they take turns going to each other's houses on their design team, and they cook breakfast for each other, right? And they get to know each other, and they talk about things that are not about the project. And I think that is such an interesting, refreshing take on the current state of our industry and many other industries, which is all pushing towards kind of honing the perfect machine. And this is really kind of getting back to more tactile and more sensitivity around craft and what that actually means and what it takes, because the value ultimately, and this is what, again, architects aren't really great at communicating this, is like if you can get it to be a twofer or a threefer or a fourfer, it's like, well, where do those ideas come from? They're not just repeating the same output every time after time. It's a fresh take, new perspectives. And I think that, a lot of times all of these things are kind of at odds with each other, but it's great to hear that perspective come back again and say like, well, we're slowing down so that we can be more creative.
There's actually a lot of neuroscience behind what you just explained. So if you think about when we're in the office and it deadline driven, like come on, like it all has to be done efficient,
Yesterday,
faster, more.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And then we know that dynamic. We go on vacation. We get a good night's sleep, maybe a few margaritas, on the beach, and then all of a sudden, like all of these ideas come rushing forth, and we're thinking, where were these a week ago?
When I needed them.
When I needed all of them.
Yeah.
And the neuroscience behind it is that when we're at work and we're constantly in that deadline driven, has to be done yesterday kind of thing, it takes us back to like the early days of Homo sapiens, and the saber-toothed tiger is chasing us. It's that adrenaline. We're in that high beta survival, fight or flight kind of mode, except now the saber-toothed tiger is our client deadline, or our imposed deadline, whatever it is. But we're in that high beta fight or flight, and then we step out of the environment. We go out in nature. Our mind relaxes. We get some time to sleep, and it drops our brain waves literally from high beta down into theta, which is where the most creative and most amazing work comes from. And that's exactly, if we slow down, we will go faster. So we think about, we spent 60 hours last week trying to get this amazing thing done that week because that met the deadline. But here in just like 16 hours, by going on vacation and relaxing and taking away all these parameters, it came more naturally. And I think that's a big part of the slow down to speed up type of thinking.
But you have to be intentional about it, and you could make that change, and you will slowly boil the frog back to current status, which is, oh crap, like I'm just putting out fires all the time. And it's like, how do you regain that perspective or keep that perspective throughout the process? And I'm just curious, from your standpoint, when you're coaching people and working on strategy around this, like how do you get more creative, and how do you slow down? How do you... So I'm curious what you tell people. Do you tell people schedule walks into your schedule? Like, don't allow people to book time in your calendar. Like, what do you do? Because I think a lot of times you're going to hear from some other department that says, "Oh, what do you mean you're not available?" And all of these.
I don't care. You're going to take a walk. We got to have this meeting. Like
Right.
the client wants it or the big boss wants it. Actually, I go back to something even more elementary than that. I tell people to take 3 breaths in, just hold it, and then slowly exhale through their mouth. Because
we're not going to cut this part out of the podcast, Carla. We're not going to even shorten that section right there. 'Cause the magic of
Can I say it a little bit faster? Like, can I say it a little bit faster? Because that moves us from that fight or flight down into that relaxation.
Interesting.
And it
small
starts
thing.
with a matter of 3 breaths. And I learned it as a parent with 3 kids under the age of 4, with a business that I owned and all that goes on when you have life at that time. It is just by, if you take 2 or 3 or 4 seconds to breathe in, do double on the outtake. And it automatically resets your body's chemical system. And that's something you can do in a matter of 5 to 10 seconds. You don't have to say, okay, we're going for a 15-minute walk. It can be somebody comes to the door of your office and says, we need you right now, or we need you on the call. You can take those breaths in and out. So that's where I start at the very most fundamental basis. And people say, well, yeah, but I need something more active. And I say, no, you don't. That's the last thing you need.
No, you don't.
Is something more active. You need something that takes you out of the active.
It's totally interesting that you say that. So on a slightly different tact, been dealing with a lot of people who are so bogged down in the minutia, the projects, and you see their moods change, a little bit of depression, just kind of in today. For some reason, I was being the Buddha on Zoom with everybody, and I was telling them we have to. I was like, I know you guys hear me say this often, but let's do this. Let's take a moment. Let's step back, take that deep breath, and just realize what we're doing. Let's regain some perspective, because at the end of the day, so I go big picture, we get to create. And I know that you're sitting there and you're got your blinders on and you're looking at that one thing, and that one thing you lose sight over the big picture. But take a step back, just take that deep breath, and think to yourself, I get to create. And then okay, yeah, you're gonna probably get right back at that detail or whatever it is that you're doing, but then you see what that one little thing. How that one little thing kind of works to the big thing, and to understand how your role plays in all of that. And then it gives them, to me, it gives them more of an understanding of ownership of what they're doing, so that then they feel a part of something and can kind of regain the perspective of what it is that they're doing, and why sometimes the minutia is equally as important as kind of the head in the clouds kind of thing, and then the blinders, and then back and forth, and just kind of keep zooming in and out and realize what your ultimate, what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you a quick, concrete, tangible example of how this can work. I didn't work with this company. I was interviewing their CMO, and they had started an innovation week. They brought in a new chief technology officer, and he said, I want to shut the company down for 1 week, twice a year. He said, we'll let our clients know, if there's an emergency, we'll be there and available. But he said, I want the entire company to be involved in innovation. And interestingly, the chief marketing officer was pushing back against it, saying no, we have to do the things, we have to get the sales. And the technology officer said, this is more important than you realize. To have everybody involved in innovation and realize everybody contributes and everybody sees what it looks like across the organization. And so there was a woman from the finance team who worked on a team, and they had some product roadmaps, and then they said, if there's another issue that you see that you want to work on, or something you hear from a customer, form your own teams. People can sign up to be on whatever team they want to be on, contribute in whatever way makes you happy. Some people say, I don't know anything about what's going on, but I'm really good at doing PowerPoint, or I'm really good at putting a story structure and arc together, whatever it worked. So there was a woman in finance who worked on a team with some folks in IT. And then at the end of the week, she had such an amazing experience that the next Monday she went back and said, okay, how can I apply this same kind of thinking to what I do? Again, too much work to get done. So she started to look around and she realized that every month she spent 40 hours on a manual process. So 1 week out of the month she spent putting together this report. And so she went back to what she remembered the IT people were doing. She taught herself a programming language. She wrote the program, automated that report that now takes her 12 minutes, from 40 hours to 12 minutes. And a lot of people say, well, is that really innovation? And when you look at it, essentially, she's getting 15 months worth of work done now in 12 months.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly innovative.
That's a silly question.
And you think about that sense of agency that she has now. And back to technology takes away the mundane, soul-sucking kind of things. Now she's able to have more mental energy every single day when she comes to work to do higher level thinking. And I think that's incredible for people to understand.
This is a great use case for AI, right? Is writing code.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's absolutely incredible and getting better and better all the time. And to democratize a tool like coding so that anybody can do what you just talked about doing, that is an absolute game changer to turn things that take many, many hours. I heard a recent example about something that like that at a national parks project, and it was like this thing that took 60 hours a month for a team of people to do down to 6 minutes, and it's like, it's absolutely incredible. That is innovation, and just to give people the ability to use tools and to experiment and to iterate and to figure that kind of thing out, I think a lot of companies are missing out on the opportunities to find innovation in weird places throughout their office, because if you're in architecture, it's like, well, the designers or the architects that's where the innovation needs to happen, because that's going to have the most impact. And no, it could be anywhere in the company from anybody. Who cares where the ideas come from, right? It should absolutely benefit. It would benefit the business to come from just about anywhere. And the tools are there.
And innovation, 90% of innovation happens outside of traditional innovation groups, whether that's a design group or the engineering group or whatever. And you think about that 90% is essentially how the rest of the business is done. And, the design is created, the contract signed, whatever it is. It's that other 90% of the business that creates a lot of friction between the work and the execution. So if we can bring AI in to strip a lot of that away, to make it more efficient, more predictable, that's huge. That's hugely innovative. If we're curious enough to ask the questions, instead of just to say, well, this is the way we do it, and come on, let's do more of it, to stop and have that card with the question mark in front of us, like Cormac has, and say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it? Why are we doing it this way? And what if we go down a rabbit hole with questions? A lot of times we're in meetings and we say, like, okay, let's pull it back in. We're going down the rabbit hole. We shouldn't be doing this. But what if you took 15 minutes and really did go as far down the rabbit hole as possible and explored things? And I think that's a beautiful thing about curiosity. We can use it. We can practice it. We can experiment with it. But it's still okay to put parameters around it. It doesn't have to be a can of worms.
Yeah. I like that attitude, and I feel like that is the kind of thing that can really benefit firms and architects. It doesn't even matter the size of the business, right? But you have to stretch and work on those muscles if you want them to actually do something. It's just like fitness, right? It's like if you don't want to feel terrible hiking up the mountain, like you have to practice hiking up the mountain, right? To get there.
Or the one time you do it a year, you're just going to be really sore afterwards.
Yeah. And I mean, this is not different than that. Like creativity, innovation, like I used the example earlier about 95% of the design, getting thrown away because those were the bad designs and we went with the good one. Like this is the same as that. Like you have to be willing to go through and iterate and try and fail and learn and discover new things by going through that process for that one thing to hit, for those two things to hit. But the payback is pretty awesome.
Yeah, you think about it in batting average. Like, what's an amazing batting average? 300?
300, yeah.
Yeah. And that's an amazing one, right?
Yeah.
So if you think
Yeah.
about that with ideas, what if you just had a 300 batting average with your ideas, and we started to see it in that kind of context? Helps bring
Yeah.
a little
Reframing it. Yeah, it does bring some good perspective to it.
It means that you failed 700% of your 300%.
Yeah, you swung and missed.
You swung and missed, and you tried, but you tried.
Exactly.
It's those.
But you learned something from that.
Right.
Your
Right.
next swing got that much better. Next better. I mean, there's I read that we don't get to really truly creative ideas until we've gone through the first 200 ideas, which, and I'm not, I tell people that statistic, and I'm not saying, for everything that you need done, you have to go through 200 ideas, but it's the idea that don't stop at 8 or 10 ideas. Don't
Right,
look for the
right.
one right idea, because what our brain does is we go to the familiar, the safe, the things that have worked before. Well, we need to push beyond those. Maybe you go for 30 or 40 ideas.
Right.
And then you'll have some different and richer and more unique ideas. But I think it's the curiosity that takes you down that path instead of just staying with what's familiar.
Yeah. Cormac, you sharing that you played the Buddha. Like, first of all, amazing visual, right? But really, I mean, I really appreciate that you said that and that you did that, because I feel like that's kind of what this conversation was, and I'm hoping that our audience feels like that from hearing this, because you need these reminders to happen every once in a while, because we are all frogs getting boiled slowly, and then all of a sudden we realize, like, oh crap, like, how did we get here?
The water's hot.
Our profession's like that. Our firms are like that. And it's important to get that bigger perspective that you talked about. Hey, like, breathe, right? Like that is just such a key thing to say. Everybody breathe. Mm-hmm. What if we just stop, get out of your head for a second and just breathe, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's assess and reassess and constantly reassess and constantly ask why. I think that all of these things that have been floating around this conversation, great reminders for us and for the audience to just, like, oh, let's be a little bit introspective here. Let's reflect on what's actually going on and not just keep doing it because we forget to ask why we forget. I think that's my big takeaway from this conversation is that we all can and should do that more often.
But I think to your point, Evan, when you're talking about this is a muscle that we can strengthen, the more we use it, the more malleable and elastic it gets. So if we think that it takes a lot of time to stop and ask the questions and take a breath and reassess and reevaluate, the more we do it, the faster we can go through that process also.
Yeah.
Because now our brain learns, it gets trained that, okay, we aren't just going to jump to the safest, quickest, most familiar thing. We, collective brains and thinking, we stop, we take a breath, we visually look around, because where our vision goes, our mind goes. So we literally physically look broader, our minds open and think broader. And we can train ourselves to think in that way, just like we can train ourselves to, to run faster, to jump higher, whatever it might be. And so then it's not as inefficient as our belief that it is right now.
Yeah.
And we need to ask the question, well, what are the ramifications if we don't? Right?
Yeah. Well, I talk about what if your safest bet is actually your riskiest move in this.
Can I share an example of something that I feel like I'm learning a lot because I'm failing a lot?
He's getting the idea of the Midwest. He's 100% getting used to the he's now understanding what a Midwest goodbye is now.
Yeah. Sorry.
He's getting it.
I thought we were done. I'm pointing at my guitars here. I've been playing guitar a long time, and I've taken it pretty seriously in the last, let's just call it a year, to get actually better. And I am seriously taking my lumps right now. And I think it's just like an experiment. And I don't know if you guys have examples of this, but I feel like, Cormac and I have talked about this with teenage kids. It's like teenage kids have a hard time putting themselves out there because they literally do not want to fail. They don't want to fail in our eyes. They don't want to fail in somebody else. They don't even want to fail in their own eyes and keep it a secret, right? They're absolutely terrified of failing. And I'm literally failing learning how to play at a higher level of guitar. And it's been important for me to reflect as I go through this process to say, like, this is how it actually works. This is how you get better at doing something, is you just keep showing up and you make time to do that thing. I think that, like, we have to put ourselves in those situations over and over again. We have to get out of our comfort zone, and we have to go back to Cormac's word. We have to stretch ourselves so that we can actually find the capacity for new things, new ideas, and that just doesn't happen when you're always the expert, when you're always have all the answers, and you don't have that naive expertise or even just that naivete, right, when it comes to something, and just be willing to say, like, I'm a total novice, total beginner here, and showing up. Like, I show up at my friend's house and he's teaching me stuff, and I literally torture him with how I play guitar in those situations. And he literally puts up with me because he cares. And I find, like, that to me is just it's an amazing thing to go through, and it's hard. I'll just throw that out there.
I read this amazing book last year by a writer named Michael Easter. And I think he writes for Men's Health or Men's Journal, among, like, Outside Magazine and some other things. But the book is called The Comfort Crisis. And he lives in Henderson, Nevada, which I think is right out, like, on the outskirts of Las Vegas.
Vegas, yeah.
And he said, in one part of the book, he said, I live my life at 73 degrees. The
Perfect.
AC in my house
all the
is set
time.
at 73.
Right.
I go get in my car at 73 degrees. I drive to a gym, it's 73 degrees. I pay money to exercise on equipment that mimics the great outdoors, so it's not too uncomfortable. You know. Right. So it's all about, we say we want to put ourselves out there and push ourselves, but we only want to do it comfortably. Mm. And the gist of the story is he goes with a couple of other guys up in super, super remote Alaska for a month, caribou hunting. And as he's up there, it's all of these reflections back about, wow, he didn't realize just how comfortable he spent his life until, I mean, he didn't shower for a month. Mm-hmm. There was no, like, you drank what you filtered, and that's what you drank, or you ate what you killed, you know, kind of thing. And a little bit of the mourning that he experienced when he went from back into the 73-degree life he had, and he realized how critical it was to shake that up. And, like, he'd spent so much of his life trying to control the circumstances, and now he realized the damage that all of that comfort had caused him. And so that's the gist of The Comfort Crisis.
That's super cool. A lot of people need to read that.
And he's an amazing writer too.
We are very comfortable.
Yeah.
The royal we, all of us.
Maybe you could play the guitar for us, Evan, a little bit, and take us out of our comfort zone.
A little outgoing tune here for the end of the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe you can write a jingle.
I think we got to get you back on here for that book club that we're going to be doing now. And the first book assignment is The Comfort Crisis.
Yeah,
I like it. Yeah. I like it, and I really like that for my teenager.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, if he's not comfortable, it's not happening.
If he's not comfortable, nobody's comfortable, right?
Yeah. You know, we're one last thought. Sorry, I'm going to continue this Midwest goodbye here.
Cormac and I know exactly what one last thought means.
Yeah.
Are we at the car? Are we standing out in the street now?
No, I think we're still in the doorway of the house.
Okay, we're still in the house.
I'm still in the kitchen. But
have another cup of coffee.
Last week, I was in a bunch of final reviews for a variety of different studios, variety of different levels of students and stuff. And when it came time for the break, and we were these are academics, practitioners, and everybody else, and we're sitting around the table, and we're talking about just kind of talking after action review of some of the things that we saw, but then also kind of things that we see in practice. And you bring up this point of, Evan, when you were talking about the teenagers and not wanting to put themselves out there because they don't. I don't know where we said it wasn't okay to fail and learn from the curiosity of failure.
But we did say it. Like
but
it's
somehow,
literally a thing.
It is 100% a thing. It's like, why would you do it that way? You should do it this way. And you start to, and so this level of confidence in feeling comfortable with failing to learn from failing. I watched a clip today, and it just happened to be Tom Hanks talking about that he's learned more from failing at a role, failing at these experiments that he tries when he's playing a certain character or something, that he's learned more from that and has allowed himself that opportunity to fail. And I don't think we take enough time, and this was kind of like the summation of the conversation that we're having at the table, is that we don't take enough time to tell everybody it is okay to fail, because that is, kind of the root of where innovation lies, right? It's the birthplace of curiosity. It's like, oh, well, that didn't work. Let me try it again,
Yeah. And it's a great philosophy, and I don't know if it came from the idea of parents who wanted to make life easier for their kids. So they're like, the helicopter parents, the snowplow parents, or whatever it is, that
shortcuts.
The subtle message is, let me clear the difficulties so you can do it the right way, or what. I'm not a psychologist to know what that is, but I remember when my husband and I first got married. We've been married for 30 years, and we came skiing, and I had gone skiing once before. He grew up in Idaho, and so he grew up skiing. And I said one time, like, I'm so happy because I didn't fall down this morning, like at lunch. And he said, well, here's the thing. If you don't fall down, you don't know where the edge of your abilities are. And I think that's the same way with failure. If everything we do always works out all right, we don't know that gap between where we are and where we could be. I have a good friend. She wrote a book called Ask Like an Auctioneer. And it's fascinating because she, Silicon Valley tech kind of person, went to Missouri to auctioneering school. Her and a group of, belt buckle wearing, cowboy hat sporting guys in this auctioneering class. And she said what she learned from what they taught her and from all of the cowboys she was in there with is that typically we stop when we get a yes, right? It's like, yeah, high five me, I got the yes. But auctioneers keep going until they get a no. And that's your gap of possibility between the yes that we stop at and the no we should go for.
Yeah.
And that's been a fascinating thing to think. And I when we think about curiosity and possibilities, if what we're trying always works out, or if the ideas we put forth always get the okay, then we're not reaching what could be. And I mean, we can put it into tangible language. I mean, that means revenue. If we're not pushing what's possible, it means we're also not looking at potential revenue.
I think it also means innovation. And so I want to ante up on what you just said and make us again kind of reflect, because I've seen this happen many times working in an architecture firm. Maybe I'm moving us out onto the sidewalk now, guys, in our Midwest goodbye. But I feel like there's been so many times where I've seen my team tell me what the client won't go for.
We decide on their behalf.
Yeah. We make the decision for them so that we don't have to hear no from them.
Yeah.
And waste their time, or however you want to frame it, right? But we do that. We compromise all the time on their behalf. And
so true.
It happens over and over and over again. But I think this plays into that idea of fear of failure. Like, we don't want to throw something out there that they could squash. We don't want to. This happens a lot, and I'm curious from your point of view. I mean, this happens. What I'm saying is this happens internally as well as like doing something in the world. Great, and again, like going back to this idea of like, where's a safe place to have absurd ideas? Absurd for now, obvious later, right? It's really interesting to watch this play out time and time again in very creative industries.
When you and I had a call a couple of weeks ago, Evan, you were talking a little bit about this dynamic with a project you had years ago. I think it was with a bank.
Yeah, right.
Was like,
the facade
here's
replacement.
Typically what they want, and you were able to frame it in a different way. And so, coming back to your question about what do I do when I work with companies about how do I get to start to think them to think different. Like besides the breath and just coming down, I give them a range where they have to say, this is boring and this is so freakishly out there, like Steven Tyler from Aerosmith says, like, let your freak flag fly.
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like for them? And then let's talk about what the spectrum is in between, because the more we're exposed to something, the more familiar it becomes. So if we're uncomfortable about trying these new ideas, if it's so unfamiliar to us and our clients, maybe it doesn't start with us pushing them. Maybe it's about having conversations about, this is what's going on in the world and this is what it looks like and here's the outcome of it. And in a way, by stretching them so far in that way and then coming back to something that doesn't feel quite so weird, we've actually helped them relax because, well, at least we're not like that.
Yeah.
At least we haven't gone that far.
This is like price anchoring. Well, it's $3,000. Okay, well, $2,000. It's $2,000. That doesn't sound so bad because I thought it was going to be $3,000, right? But it's it's weird too. Like the weirdness is a great example of that.
Yeah, because one, unless we have that benchmark or that comparison to look at, like what truly is weird and what truly is out there. I mean, you can do that with lots of architecture around the world. Like, now that was weird. Now this thing, at least they didn't make our building a picnic basket. At least it doesn't look like that. Those kind of things. So then you bring it back in, and maybe it's not the whole project, but maybe it's one little detail of it, and it makes us more comfortable to push it when we can show what really out there is and what it looks like. But again, it's the more familiar, the more you're exposed to something, the more familiar it becomes, and the more familiar it is, the less risky it feels. And I think that's not only for us, but it's how we approach those conversations with clients. And it may feel like, I don't want to waste their time, I don't want to this and that. But I know for like marketing agencies, the number one reason they get fired by a client is because they quit coming to them with new ideas. Now, they may have said no to every single idea, but it's the fact that they know they're always thinking about their business and thinking about what could be and thinking about possibilities.
We had an internal rule for our team that was, architects always have to show multiple options for everything. You can't just show up with the solution, right? And so our rule was every option that we showed from in that range of like, okay, what we called safe, which was probably the one they were going to pick, we would always go crazier from there up, right? And by crazier, I just mean like more architectural, more capital A architecture, right? And something that we would
More
really
absurd.
love to see them say yes to also, right? Like no throwaway ideas. You never put a throwaway idea in front of a client because they'll pick that one. I guarantee you. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we gotta
That
make it work.
backfires. That backfires. So
They went for the
always
picnic basket.
always put stuff in front of them that you want to do. You get to do it in the very conceptual stage, and then you get to talk about those ideas, and you get better about presenting those ideas as you present those ideas more and more often to clients. And then you're going to end up with better projects over time by doing that and not putting in any duds. Don't put any duds into the world. The world does not need bad design, right? It doesn't need any more bad design. There's plenty of it out there already.
Yeah.
My go-to example is always, this, Evan, is to be the fly on the wall to listen to Eero Saarinen pitch the idea for the St. Louis Arch.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
No one's ever seen anything like that before.
Right.
And can any of us think of a world without it now?
Hmm.
But you just think about it and you're just like, how did he convince them that this was it, that this was the idea? There were so many architects, including his own father, who were pitching ideas for what this monument could be. And he's like, hey, I got an idea. This big, massive metal arch that no one has ever built before. And they're just like, why not?
And we'll
Let's
put
do
an
it.
elevator inside.
that goes sideways.
Right.
Yeah, it's
You know.
claustrophobic. Yeah.
Ex- it's just like, okay, he put out there the question that wasn't asked. How many times have we regretted not asking that question, whatever that question is?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I don't know, is there anything that talks about his design process or how he came up with it and how he got him to say yes? I haven't seen anything. To be honest, I haven't looked for it.
There are, I won't bore everybody with the whole documentaries, but we'll put them in the show notes for everybody to go look at. But it's just this conversation about, and he's convinced, what was interesting is like, he's an architect, he's convinced a lot of different people to do things that you've never seen before. And they're like, all right, Arrow, let's take that shot. So
But it wasn't the first time he tried it. It was right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like this is a muscle he had been flexing for a long time, and then
Exactly.
I mean, it reminds me of like the Sydney Opera House. It's like it's become this icon. Like when he won that competition, it was like a concept, right? It was literally they didn't even know how they were going to build it. But look at what it's done for Sydney. Like, it is the icon of Australia.
Absolutely.
And I would argue that the St. Louis Arch is very much, it is called the Gateway Arch for a reason, the gateway to the West, right? And it's interesting that these wild ideas have become so iconic and just delivered value way beyond the property lines of the site of that project. And that, to me, that is the value in this kind of thinking that we're talking about today. Not every project gets to be like that, but you'll never get to do projects like that if you never talk about those things, and if you never flex those muscles, and if you never stretch to get to the point where, oh, of course we can do that, even if you can't do it.
It's a little bit like the Seinfeld effect. I mean, the absurdity of a show about nothing.
Right.
Like it's so
I love
absurd, and it's kind of like it's so absurd. Like this big arch, and there was an artist who had a exhibit in the Royal Gorge here in Colorado. It was like cheese that hung across the Royal Gorge. It's like, who would go see that? But it was so absurd. That's what brought people to see it.
It becomes the
Everybody
attraction.
went to see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, are we ready to
on the
call?
sidewalk
Are we
now?
ready to say goodbye?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
This is
Time
Couple
to
of us in
close.
the car
It's
now.
time to close the door of the
Engine's
car.
on.
Obviously, we
Engine's
could
been
still
on.
keep. We could still keep
I
talking.
hope it's
Yeah.
electric, so we haven't been burning gas this whole time.
Well, Carla Johnson, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Yes.
Everybody go to Carla's website. It's carlajohnson.co. That is going to
CO, there's no M.
no M on the end of that. It's going to be in the links in the show notes for this episode. We'll let you get to her site, see what she does, and if you liked what you heard here, definitely check out her TED Talk and get on her newsletter and do things like that. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and having this conversation. I've learned a lot. It's been great.
It was delightful. Thanks so much for inviting me. I loved it.